I'm Matt at Nexus Baseball, and this is episode 28 of the Tommy John Epidemic. This series is a YouTube read of content from the book Plague of the Gods, an outsider's perspective on baseball's Tommy John epidemic, which is available now on Amazon. I decided to put this content on YouTube to make the material as accessible as possible. This series examines the science behind the most superhuman action the human body can produce, accelerating a baseball up to 100 miles per hour. This calculation, you might notice, does not include the weight of the forearm, arm, and hand that is also being accelerated forward, as is used by calculations such as those used in the Modus sleeve. The problem with using these weights when calculating force is their acceleration will vary significantly when we look at the length of the lever. They treat the upper arm as a catapult launching the forearm, hand, and ball forward. When the arm is at near extension, it can be instead seen as being analogous to an airplane propeller. The ball at the fingertips might be going 95 miles per hour, but the hand might be only going 90 miles per hour or less. The concept of the propeller and why it is so effective is that each part of the propeller is moving at a different speed due to its length. The speed at the tip of an airplane propeller 30 inches from the hub might be traveling at 389 knots, whereas 10 inches away from the hub, it might be only traveling 129 knots. As we travel down the pitching arm to the shoulder, the speeds get progressively lower while the weight increases. Using a sample arm length of 60 centimeters at full extension, the fingertips would be traveling at 95 miles per hour, a point 40 centimeters from the shoulder, 63 miles per hour, and a point 20 centimeters from the shoulder, only 31.7 miles per hour, while the shoulder itself is the axle and just rotating in place. For our purposes of comparison, we will ignore the energy used to accelerate the arm, as gravity also plays a role, and look just at the thrown object. This also works with Newton's third law, in that to achieve that speed out of the hand must be imparting 6 newtons of force to the ball specifically. How much force is 6 newtons? A javelin weighs 900 grams, or about 1.76 pounds, and can be thrown at speeds of 70 miles per hour, or 113 kilometers per hour. This is a good analogy as both techniques throw the arm forward as well as the object. Using our previous formula, it would accelerate at 31.29 meters per second squared and require a Newton force of just over 25 N, or more than 4 times the force transferred to the baseball, even with a lower speed. To put it in a more commonplace instance, in the gym, 6N would be the same force as lying down on one's back and taking a 25-pound dumbbell in one arm, pushing it off the chest to full arm extension over the course of 1 second. This is a feat easily achievable by any athlete. Keep in mind both examples account for the acceleration of the arm as well. This demonstrates that the force used in the baseball pitch is actually quite small due to the incredibly low weight of the object. The difficulty, therefore, is not in the generation of massive forces, but the ability to convert those forces into acceleration. It is my contention that this acceleration is generated almost entirely in the rotator cuff of the shoulder, as well as the teres major. The rotator cuff is made up of the supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, and the subscapularis muscles. This muscle group is very poorly understood by laymen, as it is a relatively complex group of muscles that encompasses both the top of the humerus, the upper arm bone, as well as the scapula, the shoulder blade. These two structures are interconnected and one of the greatest evolutionary gifts humanity has received. It gives us our incredible shoulder range of motion used to climb, manipulate tools, as well as throw. What is so confusing to most is that these rotator cuff muscles are hidden under the much larger and much more powerful deltoid muscles and are often confused with being a part of the back. Most workout routines will not train the rotator cuff directly, leaving it only to get indirect work in other exercises. The rotator cuff's primary responsibility is ensuring the connection of the top of the humerus to the scapula. The shoulder joint is not really a ball and socket, but a shallow depression of cartilage that the humerus rotates on. It is so shallow to allow the upper arm to travel in an almost full circle around the joint without being blocked. The glenohumeral joint, or humerus to scapula, is supported by 2 small ligaments and is almost entirely dependent on the rotator cuff muscles for its support to prevent dislocation. Its secondary responsibility is its most interesting for our purposes, as the muscles of the rotator cuff are also responsible for internal and external rotation of the upper arm. When the infraspinatus, infra for short, and teres minor contract, the humerus spins in its socket, bringing the humerus into external rotation. When the subscapularis, subscap, and teres major contracts, the humerus spins into internal rotation. Supraspinatus, supra, is the least utilized of these muscles in the pitching motion and is responsible for raising the arm up and creating the angle of the shoulder blade in the first place to allow rotation to happen at shoulder height. The design of these muscles is ingenious, with relatively short lengths and large surface connection areas. The massive surface connection areas of the subscapularis and infraspinatus are particularly important, as they cover most of the surface area of the inside and outside face of the scapula and connect off to the humerus. The muscle fibers that are closest to the humerus are the shortest, while those furthest are almost double the length. This is a unique structure that allows for incredibly fast muscle activation, where the shorter fibers provide force more quickly than the longer fibers to provide for a quick contraction. From a pitching perspective, the whole rotator cuff is necessary to provide shoulder stability and rotation when delivering the pitch. The infra and teres minor are responsible for the rotation of the arm back into cock and straight into the maximum external rotation layback position. This layback position is beyond their normal range of contraction, but the force of the hip and torso turn provides a stretch on the subscapularis and teres major on the other side of the scapula, allowing for the close to 180-degree layback. Even the most mobile pitcher cannot control their arm back into this position without a stretch force. This pullback by the infra and teres muscles should be as powerful as necessary to increase the stretch on the subscap without compromising shoulder stability. In this case, that is primarily making sure the two sides of the rotator cuff are equally strong, to prevent one side from damaging the other. The subscap and teres major are the muscles responsible for the force produced during the acceleration phase. When they are fully stretched by the contraction of the infra and teres muscles, they can harness the potential energy of the legs and torso and convert it into elastic energy like a slingshot. The difference between a slingshot and a pitcher's shoulder is that the elastic energy is only part of the equation. At full stretch, the subscap and teres major use elastic energy to propel the arm forward into powerful internal rotation, while centrifugal force of the torso rotation also extends the arm. Just before maximum arm extension, the subscap, now finished with the stretch response, contracts as hard as possible. As the arm is now in front of the body, this turns the arm into pronation, thumb down, and supplies an additional powerful force to the baseball as it leaves the hand. This portion of the motion was often confused with a twist motion of the forearm, but this pronation is instead produced properly by the final contraction of the subscap to launch the baseball off the fingertips. It is also responsible for the natural motion of the pitcher's arm crossing the body towards the glove side in the follow-through, along with the centrifugal force. These muscles, when combined with a quick hip turn, are easily able to produce the 6 newtons of force necessary to accelerate the baseball to 95 miles per hour. Why it is so hard to break the 105 mile per hour mark set by Aroldis Chapman is that the subscap in most people will be approximately the same strength and has a limit to its stretch, and therefore usable contractive force, due to the range of motion of the human shoulder. Likewise, the arm cannot, using the force of the hips, go into greater external rotation than parallel to the ground. Those that possess the proper mobility and range of motion should be able to hit speeds in the 90 mile per hour or more range. Mobility and range of motion are the key factors that allow this process to occur. The challenge then becomes, how can we hit maximum range of motion, that 180-degree layback of the arm, while still maintaining shoulder health? The key is balance and strength between the different muscles at work. Join me for episode 29 next week. Remember, if you like the content, please like and subscribe. Your support makes this work possible. Also, if you want to jump ahead, please consider picking up the book on Amazon using the link in the description below. See you next week.